Mr. Speaker, I use Twitter and have about 65,000 followers, which is pretty modest by Trump standards. But my staff is smart enough to keep the launch code secret from me so that when I say something, we find the right words to express what I want to say. And occasionally, very occasionally, I have a chance to cool down before I fire off a tweet. But this week, we learned that one of our colleagues doesn't have a reasonable staff person who helps him think through his tweets. On Sunday, Steve King of Iowa tweeted out that his love and praise for the anti-Muslim nationalist candidate in Holland, who is running on an explicitly white supremacist platform, anti-immigration, anti-Islam, anti-refugee, anti-people of color. This candidate is the full white nationalist package, and apparently King and Geert Wilders are very good friends. In his tweet, Representative King says, Wilders understands that culture and demographics are our destiny. We cannot restore our civilization with somebody else's babies. Let that sink in for a moment. In context, what it means is A, Steve King believes Western civilization is under attack by outsiders, and B, those outsiders can never be assimilated or be considered part of our civilization. God knows what Representative King would think of my grandson, who likes to tell me that in this harm he's Puerto Rican and in this one he's Mexican. But he says, Grandpa, right here, I'm 100% American. You think my grandson, yeah, he's right, and the congressman from Iowa is wrong. I think my grandson is every bit as American as Steve King or I am. I was born during Jim Crow, when separate but equal was the law of the land. But during my lifetime, we fought segregation and racism, and my daughters have been fighting it even more in their generation, so that exclusion, segregation, and racial hatred are no longer the law of the land. Now, at least as far as I'm concerned, my grandson, who was born in America, is an American, whether Steve King likes it or not. Born in Illinois, he is not someone else's baby. He's 100% American. He's part of our civilization, and he is the future of America, along with Steve King's grandchildren. Just to be clear, Representative King's message was warmly received and retweeted by none other than David Duke, the Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan, who's been a very proud Republican candidate on numerous occasions. Duke said, just in case you were thinking of moving, sanity reigns supreme in Iowa's 4th Congressional District, and quote, God bless Steve King. Oh, but Representative King was not done. He's never done. He did an interview with an Iowa talk radio where he discussed, quote, the plan of television anchorman Jorge Ramos to make white people the minority in America, causing King to respond that, quote, I will predict that Hispanics and the blacks will be fighting each other before that happens. So what happens when a member of Congress makes racist remarks? Is he censured? Are his words taken down? Is he rebuked by the leaders of his party? If he travels somewhere without getting permission or he expected a gift without prior approval of Congress, he would be punished. He might even get censured or called out in some way. But for making racist comments, for supporting a racist candidate in someone else's election, or for saying things that receive high praise from David Duke and the KKK, nothing's going to happen. I have not heard leaders in the Republican Party scrambling to say that Steve King does not represent their views on race, religion, diversity, and the threat that, quote, somebody else's babies pose to American civilization. A friend of mine in Chicago asked me what I thought was going on when a member of Congress says such hurtful, xenophobic things, calling essentially on black and brown people to join in a race war. The answer is that people feel that Representative King feel empowered by the presence of Steve Bannon, Stephen Miller, Jeff Sessions, empowered by a president who wants us all to fear Muslims, fear Mexicans, and frankly, fear all Latinos, even my American-born grandson. And this is what happens when American men and women remain silent. When we do not stand up to the bully, the racist, the nationalist, they get more and more empowered. They get more and more empowered, and their actions become more and more normal. Well, saying that black and brown people will be fighting each other and saying that non-white people are somehow someone else's babies and children and are not our children, the children of a nation that believes all men are created equal, well, that is not normal, and the American people will not accept the silence of the majority party when one of their own speaks out in this way. I'm waiting for the censure, the denunciations, and the rebukes, but I suspect I'll be waiting a long time.
The gentleman